Let me begin with a statement that may feel uncomfortable. Most of the problems you believe are happening inside you are not internal at all. They are relational. They exist because, in one way or another, your life has become organized around how you are seen. Not consciously, not deliberately, but persistently. You may call it anxiety, low confidence, overthinking, fear of failure. But beneath all those names, there is a single question shaping your behavior. What will they think of me? And that question, once it takes root, quietly rearranges your entire life. Alfred Adler believed something radically different from most modern psychology. He believed that human beings are not driven primarily by trauma, instinct, or unconscious damage. They are driven by goals. Not the goals they say out loud, but the goals their behavior reveals. And this changes everything. Because if your life is organized around a goal, then your emotions, thoughts, and habits are not random. They are functional. They serve something. This is where many people misunderstand themselves. They believe their anxiety is the problem. Their fear is the obstacle. Their lack of confidence is the issue. But Adler would ask a different question. What does this emotion accomplish? Let me paint you a familiar picture. Someone wants to apply for an opportunity, a job, a relationship, a new direction. But as the moment approaches, anxiety appears. Strong enough to paralyze them. Strong enough to justify withdrawal. They tell themselves, if only I weren't anxious, I could try. But Adler would say, the anxiety is not the problem. The anxiety is the solution. Because the real goal is not success. The real goal is avoiding the risk of being judged. And fear accomplishes that perfectly. This is the first uncomfortable realization. Many of the emotions you fight against exist because they protect you from something you are unwilling to face. And what they protect you from, more often than not, is disapproval. The book The Courage to be Disliked, written by Ichiro Kishimi and Fumite Koga, builds directly on Adler's insight. They make a claim that feels almost offensive at first. There is no such thing as purely internal worry. Every worry, no matter how private it feels, contains the shadow of another person. Someone who might judge you, reject you, disapprove of you, even when no one is in the room. Think carefully about this. When you replay conversations in your head, who are you speaking to? When you imagine failure, who is watching? When you feel ashamed, whose eyes are you seeing? The fear is not floating in isolation. It is relational. This is why Kishimi and Koga argue that the root of unhappiness is not lack of self-esteem. It is lack of courage. Not the courage to be liked, the courage to be disliked. Because the moment your happiness depends on approval, your freedom is already gone. Approval is seductive because it feels like safety. When others approve of you, you feel temporarily secure. But look closer. Approval always comes with a condition. Be this, do that, don't cross this line. And the moment you accept approval as your goal, you hand over the steering wheel of your life. You begin living by someone else's yardstick. And even when you succeed, something feels wrong. Because the life you're living is not being measured by your values. It's being graded by theirs. If you stayed with this until now, it's because something inside you recognized the pattern from Alfred Adler's teachings in The Courage to be Disliked by Ichiro Kishimi and Fumite Koga. Once you realize that unhappiness can function as a strategy, a teleological choice to avoid responsibility, as Adler posited, you can't unsee it in your daily life. The question still echoes. What would happen if you stopped living for approval altogether, as explored in the book's Socratic Dialogue over 5 Nights? Most people hesitate, not because they don't understand, but because they immediately imagine the cost: rejection from friends, loneliness in social circles, conflict in family dynamics, and the pain of being misunderstood by colleagues. Alfred Adler, who founded individual psychology in 1912 and lived from 1870 to 1937, never said freedom was comfortable. He said it was honest. He believed that the moment you decide to stop seeking approval, your relationships change instantly, not gradually, transforming vertical hierarchies into horizontal connections. Many interactions were never neutral, but organized around expectation and the vertical relationships Adler warned against. When that motivation disappears, the entire structure shifts, and fear appears. Not fear of failure, but fear of being disliked, which is the core fear in seeking universal approval. Kishimi and Koga state that freedom is being disliked by some, not hated by everyone, a radical idea from their book that sold over 10 million copies worldwide. As long as you try to be liked by all, you belong to none, including yourself, preventing true community feeling or Gemeinschaftsgefühl. Think about how many decisions you delay trying to predict reactions, like whether to speak up in a meeting or pursue a hobby. This constant calculation is not maturity. It is submission to others' tasks, which always breeds resentment, as Adler emphasized in his separation of tasks principle. When you live by others' expectations, you silently expect something in return: recognition for your efforts, gratitude for your sacrifices, fairness and reciprocity. When that doesn't come, bitterness grows, turning relationships into transactional battles rather than genuine connections. Adler rejected the idea that relationships should be built on sacrifice to earn approval, calling it manipulation instead of love. You give, not freely, but with an invisible invoice attached. And when others don't pay with the expected validation, you feel deeply wronged, as if a contract was broken. The contract was never mutual. It was imagined in your mind, invading others' tasks per Adler's teaching. Adler made a liberating distinction: two goals in relationships. One leads to anxiety through approval seeking, the other to freedom through contribution. The first is seeking approval, asking, "Do you see me as good?" which ties your worth to others' opinions. The second is seeking contribution, asking, "Am I being useful?" These questions produce entirely different lives, as detailed in the book's second and third nights of dialogue. When approval is your goal, your worth is fragile, dependent on moods, opinions, and constant comparison to others. When contribution is your goal, your worth becomes stable, because usefulness does not require applause. It only requires sincerity and a focus on your own tasks. Many misunderstand happiness, believing helping others means self-sacrifice that depletes you. Adler, along with Kishimi and Koga, argued the opposite. Helping others, when done freely without expectation, is deeply selfish in the healthiest way, fostering true community feeling. Contributing to others creates a quiet internal certainty. I matter, not because I'm admired or praised by crowds, but because my presence has inherent value through sincere usefulness, echoing Adler's emphasis on social interest in work, friendship, and love. This profound shift from seeking approval to embracing contribution, from vertical to horizontal relationships, is the courage that changes everything, leading to true freedom and a stable sense of self-worth, as taught in The Courage to be Disliked, a book that has sold over 10 million copies globally.